Welcome to the Flux Dev Meeting, October 2nd.
Hi everyone. So the big news for today is that we have released Flux 2.7. It's out there. People are starting to upgrade. Some successful, some not. And we are trying to, make this process smoother and address all these edge cases. Um, One thing we have found out in the last 2 days was that on some clusters, you can get an error saying that some Flux API version is no longer available and you are trying to apply it on the cluster, which is not actually accurate. That kind of error is can be confusing. And we are going to improve the upgrade guide to give you some commands that you can run to fix this issue. And also, Mateus has been working on extension to the Flux migrate command. So we have the Flux migrate command that you can run against your live clusters that will perform an API upgrade of all custom resources inside etcd on the clusters. And you have to run this before the migration, and you have to run it again after the migration. But there is also, the issue of I have all these Git repos. Maybe I have lots of Git repos in lots of places. And no matter if you run the Flux migration command against your clusters, if you have, let's say, an alert v1 beta 1 or a Helm release v1 beta 1 or any object v1 beta 1 or v2 beta 1 that we have deleted from the CRDs, it will fail to apply because you should have upgraded years ago. Now, we understand that maybe, this is a complicated process. You need to, search all your files in all your repos, bump the version, and so on. So we plan to release next week a patch version of Flux that extends the migration command with an optional flag, -f. And this command will not run against your clusters. This command can be run on your local file system against a checked out version of your Git repo. And what this command will do will parse all the files in your Git repo, and it will upgrade all your versions to the latest one. So if you have, I don't know, hundreds of repos or whatever, you can also run this the CLI in your CI pipelines and open a pull request with all these things, with all these bumps. But this is our solution right now to smooth the process of migrating potentially thousands of YAML files that you have in your organization. And Mateus, you also fixed we are also fixing something else, right? Around
Yes. So
Flux push. Yeah. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So the Flux push artifact command, there's a regression where the -- provider flag does not work. So in the issue and in the pull request, we put a guide of workarounds for each provider, the same guide on both, like in the issue and in the pull request. So for each of the 3 cloud providers, you have we posted a workaround for GitHub Actions and also one, like a generic one using the CLIs. So if you have part of your CI running on VMs or something like that, you can use the cloud provider CLIs. But essentially what these workarounds are running, like it's essentially running the Docker login command, which updates your Docker config file in that system. So Flux push artifact works seamlessly with Docker config. And by adding credentials for your cloud provider to that file, will make Flux push artifact work seamlessly with it. So yeah, that's it. It's essentially that. So it's like AWS ECR get login that gives you a token that you pipe to Docker login minus password std in. So so it's actually what you do to push your app container images. So you already have to do that for like pushing app images. Pushing Flux OCI artifacts is the same. So yeah, that's essentially it.
But we are going to do Flux 271, which will restore the
Yeah, we'll fix this.
functionality
Yeah,
of
it's already, the fix is already merged. It's just a matter of releasing 271 next week with both Flux Migrate -F and Flux Push Artifact fix for --, provider.
old. Oh, and you also did some fixes on the docs, right? We have some.
Right. In Customized Controller and Helm Controller, I fixed documentation of the new feature of workload identity authentication for remote clusters apply, right? So when you use customization or Helm release to apply to a remote cluster, in Flux 2.7, we have this new feature where you can use workload identity for that. I fixed the docs, only the docs in those two repos. So we can think about releasing, like making a patch release for those controllers just
No.
for the documentation or not. What do you think?
No, I think so. We had this issue before, like we had some typo or whatever, right? Indentation, some other stuff in the controller um, docs,
Yeah, like in
and
notification controller last
yeah,
time, right?
yeah, yeah, and we are kind of the way the website script is done and the publishing, we are tied of, oh, if we fix a typo in the API docs in the controller, we have to do a controller release just to get the docs published, right? Which feels
Yeah.
very wrong. We shouldn't bump controller
An
images,
idea that I
page
had
binaries.
for to improve that may prove difficult, but of course we should not pull from the main branch, right? Because we merge documentation for the next minor. But maybe we could try to pull from the release series branch, right?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly what I was thinking. So how about we change the script? Because we always, before we do any release, now that all controllers are GA, that was a problem before. But now all controllers are GA. For all controllers, we have this release/v and the version, right? How
Two
about we
dot
change the script?
something
Yeah,
dot x, right?
that text, exactly. How about we change the script? And instead of pulling the docs from the git tag, we take only, so we get the tag.
We compute the dot x one
Yes. So we
and use
get the
the
minor and
branch.
the major and the minor. We determine what's the release branch for that. And we pull the docs from there. And then we can ship docs fixes by just merging to the release branch without having to cut a whole
To
release,
release.
build
Yeah.
binaries. I mean, it's
Yeah, it's ideal.
quite
And for source, we had to do that fix for source watcher. So we are already parsing the version a bit.
exactly.
So we
Yeah.
already have ways and examples of how to do that. So we can replicate that for computing the release branch.
Yeah, let's do this for all controllers, because now we don't, like previously it was very complicated, right? Because not everything had these release branches.
But now
And
all of them do.
yeah, and we couldn't pull from main because main always has docs for the next version. But now we have release branches everywhere. So it's it's super safe to use them and no longer tie the dog fixes to releases. We always pull latest from the release branches.
Yeah, I can look into that since I did
Awesome. Yeah.
the parsing for source watcher. I can adapt to pull from the branch.
And we no longer need that, right? That was like
Yeah,
a,
no longer need
uh
that, and no longer need the fix for
notification
notification
control.
controller that we needed just for a little bit more after we released 2.7. Now that we released 2.7, we can remove that as well. So yeah, I can do that all of that in one PR. So I remove those
Awesome.
hacks and change the branch we pull from.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, that will definitely fix the docs because we should definitely get your fixes on the website, right? If someone tries right now to follow the docs for kubeconfigs, they will get a wrong configuration if they follow that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Cool.
another thing that I'm proposing for after the 271 release, we have in GitHub discussion this section called announcements. And if you, for example, if you start the Flux 2 repo, you get notifications when we do releases, but you get also notification when we publish a discussion under that section, which is called announcements. And I usually do there at the beginning of the year. I publish there, hey, we announced the roadmap, the new roadmap, and there are only basically that section is updated once every year to link to the new roadmap. But I think this time we can create an announcement around called upgrading to Flux 2.7 plus. Because this type of upgrade with Flux migrate and all this stuff is not specific to 2.7, is the procedure from all the versions going forward. If we release 2.8 and you are on 2.6, you can't just jump to 2.8. You need to follow the migration guide, right?
Yeah.
Not to mention that if you look at the roadmap for 2.8, we have in there a removal of the V2 beta 2, V1 beta 2 APIs from notification controller, for example, to get rid of the issues. We only leave one version in there. And also V1 beta 2 was deprecated more than a year ago. And we said at the beginning, when we deprecate an API version, the deprecation should turn to a removal after 6 months, right? And we never did that. And now I regret it because now we we are facing a bunch of issues that we would have faced years ago if we would have actually deleted versions and
Yeah.
learn
And
things.
also there's also that learning that we just had, maybe you can talk about a bit, but so I can start with the idea I just had and then you can deep
Sure.
dive on the learning, which is we learned that we may need to move API versions in a group together, right? So maybe we can think about of trying to do that at some point, like after, I mean, we'll probably not, well, there's external, there's artifact generator now, right? That still has
Yeah.
to go up a bit. But can we try and do this Kubernetes recommendation, let's put it like that, of moving the kinds inside a group together in the versions, right? And not
Oh
have like what
yeah.
we have today of receiver v1 and alert and provider v1 beta 3 in notification group, right?
Oh yeah. So for sure, for Source Watcher, we are not going to do this anymore. So if we
Yeah.
add the new API, it will be the same version as the current APIs. And when we upgrade everything. We are not going to have some V1, some V1 beta 2, right? It's kind of hard because
it would be very hard in source controller, for example, which has now 6 APIs, right? But
Yeah,
that's
it's
behind us, so it's okay.
yeah. I was just thinking, what would have mean to make everything GA all at once in source control? A huge pain. But anyway,
Yeah.
turns out Kubernetes is not made for this kind of freedom. Maybe we should have a group per kind, which makes groups completely useless. Anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But in
But yeah,
dev,
explain about that, right? Why am I even talking about this?
yeah. So what we discovered is that after the Flux 2.7 upgrade, if you have alerts, providers, and receivers in your Git repo, somehow the at apply Kubernetes dry run says alert v1 beta 1 is not supported. But we are not applying v1 beta 1, we are applying v1 beta 3. So something in the Kubernetes API admission control downgrades from the latest beta version to a beta version that does not even exist in the CRDs anymore, because we just removed v1 beta 1 from the CRDs. So digging into this, we figure out it's a problem in the API server, because if you restart the API server, you no longer get this error. If you restart Flux, the error persists, so it's not something cached on our client side. Also, Flux is restarted by default when you upgrade it. All the controllers are restarted. But even if you keep restarting them, whatever you do, this error will not go away. Always the Kubernetes API will downgrade the version to a non-existing version and then error out. And our solution for this was, if you run Flux migrate after the upgrade, the command somehow forces the Kubernetes API to refresh its cache, and all of a sudden it no longer tries to downgrade APIs to unknown versions. An interesting thing is that what we observe is that this only happens with the notification APIs. It does not happen with. We also deleted v2 beta 1 from Helm release. We also deleted v1 beta 1 from customization and all the sources and so on. Those APIs are fine. So why is this happening for notification kinds? The current notification group is the only group currently in Flux where we have a version skew. Some APIs are GA, receiver is v1, while alert and provider, they are not v1, they are v1 beta 3. So it turns out when you have this mixed versioning of kinds in the same group, the API no longer knows, or I'm not sure if API is the right word, the component in the API that handles the dry run code path no longer knows what's the preferred version. And it goes to the oldest version, which does not even exist in etcd anymore. And it must be something related to the cache, because if you restart your Kubernetes APIs, all the processes in your control plane, but not etcd, then this problem goes away. And of course, we are not going to tell users, hey, restart your control plane, because it's not even possible. If you run EKS, AKS, whatever, you have no control over, you can't just go there and restart the control plane, right? The solution is you have to run Flux migrate again, and that will invalidate whatever is happening at admission. So if we would have had all the alert and provider also at v1, or receiver will have never been made GA and it will have been v1 beta 3.
You just made me realize we don't have receiver v1 beta 3. Maybe that's why it's picking the lowest beta version.
Who knows? Why would I had V1 Beta 3. It went to GA way before all the other APIs, right?
Yeah, it's just like because there is no V1 non-beta series, then like it almost is like the preferred version for the entire group. Like the lowest thing that matches all of them would be
Maybe that's, yeah.
V1 Beta 1 because there is no V1 Beta 3 for all of them.
But we deleted V1 Beta 1. So why would it pick something that's not even in etcd?
Yeah. And then naturally then like what's happening
All of
after
this,
after the conversion or after we run Flux migrate, is it picking we haven't confirmed what the behavior is afterwards because there's no errors. But maybe it's V1 Beta 2 after, and that's also not desirable. So how do we fix that and how do we trace it? I'm gonna work on trying to reproduce this today. So
yeah,
Oh
like
yeah,
the versions are defined on the CRD, right? Which is for one kind. All of this because Kubernetes did not treat the version as a property of the kind,
it's
right?
the group. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, I
And
mean,
they are defined in the CRD, which is it's one-to-one with kind.
there's a lot of guessing going on. I mean, we have not traced, what the issue in API server is here, but
Yeah, yeah.
yes,
And
like
where is it?
something subtle and complicated is happening, and it's affecting people, and luckily we have a way around it for now. But yeah,
Yeah. I mean, even if we would have add dummy versions to the receiver, because only receiver is on V1, I think the the error, it will still pick something that was deleted.
yeah.
But it's like what you are saying. Oh, there is mismatch, and it picks the oldest one. Maybe that actually what's happening. Because otherwise, I can't explain why it goes to the lowest one instead
I
of
am
doing
very
Semver
confused.
ordering.
Yeah, I feel like I first learned how to do a CRD version migration when CRDs were released. And yeah, like I'm still confused as to where this is breaking. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So going back to the announcement idea. So after we release 7.1, I think we should create an entry there in announcement. Tell people very clearly, no matter what version you are currently running, if you want to move to latest from this moment on, you can't just upgrade because we have deleted these versions. So you need to follow this process and have that process there, because then we can point people to this discussion. And unlike the blog, it's a discussion. People actually can
Report
pause
your yeah.
their own experience. Hey, for me it worked. I'm running this version. This worked for me. This didn't work for me, and so on. Right? And it's a discussion. We can help people there. What is happening right now? Like people post on Slack, and all these Slack discussions, all these threads will get lost. Right? We can't just tell people, hey, go and search on Slack some conversation I had a week ago. Like there are so many things going on in Slack that these discussions are completely lost once they go stale. So I think we should move this to GitHub. And if someone says on Slack, hey, I have this issue with migration and so on, instead of discussing this in Slack, we should give them the link to GitHub discussion. Hey, please report your issue there. And also, this can be a live document. Based on feedback, we can improve the migration path in the discussion because we can edit it, and we don't have to do this dance with the blog post and so on. And after we created the discussion there, we go to the blog post and we link to the discussion. So we have a single place where, when you do a Google search, when you ask on Slack, whatever, open an issue, will point everybody, hey, please look at this discussion and let's continue the debugging. So we have everything in one place, and it's because this will happen for the next years, right? We
But
still have like
but we can also have a page in the website with a standard upgrade procedure that will apply to all upgrades going forward, right? Like that step that procedure in the blog post right now, it's very close to being something that people would have to do every time, right? So we can extract that to a page in the website as well, and right.
later on, yeah.
And it would be
Later
nice
on.
if, like, this thing is very big, right? Like, Flux users are used to being able to upgrade from any Flux 2 version to latest. This is no longer possible, right? Starting with 2.7, you have to do stepped upgrades every time. So we should highlight that in as the best we can. And not
We
just
wait, we have this. So we have a dedicated doc called upgrade, right? Where we
Mm.
explain to people how to do the upgrade with various tools. So this is the place where we should put the
Update.
upgrade
The new
procedure with
procedure.
Flux Migrate. But I'm not for doing this now because there are so many unknowns.
Right,
We don't
yeah.
know.
Once
Right.
once it converges to the procedure, the solid procedure that people will have to do every upgrade going forward, we can put it there. But what I'm talking about as well is to, like, this is too big change for us not to highlight the best we can. Like, I don't know, put something on the first page of the website somehow, explaining, or maybe not explaining, just linking, but some kind of announcement also in the website that our upgrade procedures are changing going forward. So not just this GitHub discussion, but also in the first page of the website somehow. It's an important thing, I guess, to do.
Sure. I really doubt any Flux user goes to the first page of the Flux website, but we can do this. Like no one does
like
it.
people go to Google and do Flux customization, like I do. Like
Exactly.
every time I need it, and there's
Yeah,
always the
no,
first
no
link.
one goes to the first page.
Yeah.
Like we can also see this from the Netlify trace
Right,
report.
right. What do
Right.
Flux users see very often? Like the Flux 2 repo.
So no, from Netlify, the API docs are 99% of the traffic.
Right.
Right. Because it comes from Google search or AI or whatever.
Well, maybe a banner on the top of the website that is shown in every page, maybe something like that, right? I don't know.
Complicated.
Yeah, we use a banner typically for like KubeCon announcements and things like that. It
No,
Yeah,
it
like
does
those in
not go on
GitHub,
it.
right?
It does not go on every page. It only
Yeah, not in our website. I'm not aware or aware of any banners like that. But it's like a common practice. Like in CNCF, I often see those top of page announcements from CNCF orgs and repos, right? In GitHub. So maybe something like that. It's not someone you have, but
I mean, like we have a section about migrating from Flux v1 in the docs sidebar. I feel like most people who read the docs would see a sidebar entry, but you just add another section.
no. If we add it to upgrade, is okay because it's already indexed. That page gets traffic a lot. So the installation, all the installation section and API docs, that's where most people go.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah,
if
we just need to
if
upgrade or just update the upgrade docs.
yeah, that's but having anything we do in docs, it's read only. People cannot give any kind of feedback, they cannot ask questions and so on. What I'm trying to do with the discussion is funnel all the feedback and all the questions there and not spread it out on. I'm getting questions on LinkedIn, Slack, GitHub issues, whatever, right? This is not good. There was a guy on LinkedIn yesterday or 2 days ago. He is upgrading from 0.36 to latest, and he wants a GitOps way to do rollback. Like, that's insane. And I mean, okay, great. You want to do rollbacks across 5 years of development. But that kind of questions and so on would be way better to have it in a single discussion where we answer for once. No, there is no automated rollback. You need to do an uninstall, then uninstall. Upgrade now assumes running a separate command. We also need to tell the users of Flux Terraform provider that just running Terraform apply will not work. That will error out. They need to add to their Terraform script, how is it called, Mateus? A null
No
resource.
resource.
Resource and call as a one of the Flux migration before and not call the same resource after, right? All this stuff. And we are going to face all these questions in the coming weeks everywhere on all the repos, in Slack and so on. So to make things better for us and for all the users, we should send them to a single place, and that can't be the website because the website is redone. Let's see what the people that are using Helm, the community Helm chart. Good luck running Flux Migrate with that.
Good luck.
Yeah. So there are a bunch of issues. If they don't use our standard tooling, they'll run into a bunch of problems. So I expect a wave of we can't upgrade. Help us out. Yeah. Yeah, it is what it is. We can't keep these APIs forever. We probably kept them too long. We should have went with deletion earlier, and users would have learned that, yeah, things are not forever. You need to migrate stuff. But we
The
kind of
usability win of keeping everybody up to date though, like I mean, it would have been a trade-off. Like I think there's already enough people running old versions of Flux. Like the fact that it was so easy to stay up to date, like you just GitHub Action or like download the new CLI, commit it to the repo. That's a trade-off for sure.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
we ideally should get to a place where nothing has to be done after the upgrade. That would be nice. Then at least it's just 2 steps instead of 3. So I'm very curious about how to deal with this. It also would be interesting if there's something that could just like sit in the cluster long-lived that, I mean, of course, Flux operator can do your migrations for you for storage. But yeah.
Yeah, we can. I mean, in that discussion, I'll definitely highlight Flux operator, especially for people that are using the community Helm chart and the Terraform provider. It's Helm operator has a Helm chart. You can swap the Helm chart. The Flux one, the community one with the Helm operator does the same stuff. It's very easy to deploy Flux operator from Terraform. You can swap it out. And it solves so many issues. Especially Helm that leaves all the CRDs there. If you do a Helm uninstall, you don't get rid of the Flux CRDs. It does not remove finalizers or anything, right? So it's impossible to do a rollback. You have so many issues if you do it with Helm. There are
you'll get very stuck.
tons of issues, very, very stuck. And good luck then cleaning it up. You'll end up running Flux uninstall the CLI. That's what happens in the end. So you'll still have to use the CLI, right? So if you, instead of using Helm and the Flux CLI, why not use the Flux operator Helm chart that deals with all these issues, right? So yeah, I also plan to have in this discussion a section around, how maybe this is the time, to switch from whatever you are using to Flux operator, because you still need to do stuff. It will not just work from now on easily. But also, this is a transition phase. We have alert and provider for next year to make GA. Once and then all the core controllers in Flux will be GA. Next year, we are going to remove all the
Except
beta
for
APIs.
SourceWatcher.
Yeah, SourceWatcher is optional, is a optional controller. I'm talking about the 4 controllers which are core of Flux, right? Source controller now, all APIs are GA. Customize Helm, GA. Notification, half GA, only receiver. Once we have alert and provider at GA, the default controllers gives you the assurances. Everything from now on will be backwards compatible. There are 0 problems of upgrade once you are on the GA APIs. It's like deployment v1 in Kubernetes, right? You'll never have to go there, remove fields, add fields. There will be no breaking changes. So this running Flux migration and all of that stuff, it's a transition, the last mile of having everything at GA, removing all these beta APIs, and then we are going back to really easy upgrades. No more versioning, like it's so easy. And like we keep adding features, and we are very good at doing this. We add optional fields. Every new feature is opt-in. We have feature gates. We have so many, ways of shipping new features without breaking ever the APIs. And everything new is opt-in, and if you opt-in on it, that's great, right? You can always run Flux uninstall, opt out of that, and roll back to a previous version if you want. Like, also rollbacks will be way easier once everything is on GA, right? Because if you stick with whatever the 2.7 APIs and you don't use the new stuff, you can swap versions so easily after this. But there are some hurdles to get there. I think 2.8 and 2.9 will be those versions where, yeah, we'll clean up all the APIs. We make alert and provider GA in 2.8, hopefully. And then things will be really smooth. Why I'm saying 2.9 is that we can't remove, the V1 beta 3 APIs currently in a notification controller when we do GA. We need to leave people 6 months to have time to migrate. But definitely next year we'll have all these CRDs, a single version, the GA one, and that will simplify a lot everything.
So in 2.8, we're gonna remove V1 beta 2.
We are removing V1 beta 2 already, if you look at the roadmap. For some things.
So 2.8, you mean, right? Like right now, we in 2.7 remove V1 beta 1, V2 beta 1.
Yes. Yes.
So
And
2.8 will be beta 2.
2.8 removes source, V1 beta 2, customize, V1 beta 2, Helm, V2 beta 2, notifications, V1 beta 2. We can't remove the image stuff because we made it GA now. So we need to wait 6 months until we can remove it, right? So all the image APIs, V1 beta 2 will be removed in 2.9. If we go to GA with alert and provider in 2.8, we can then remove it at the end of next year, right? So end of next year, 1 year from now, basically, we should have all the core controllers, stable APIs everywhere, no beta versions anymore. Right? Hopefully.
Cool.
So, Adrian,
Yeah.
do you
Adrian.
have any topics?
Hello. No, interesting. I mean, yeah, in my team internally, we are struggling a bit as well with the upgrades deprecations. So yeah, sounds quite familiar to me. Yeah, I just wanted to, let's say, resume the conversation. I don't know if you are, let's say, if you're not tired enough to think about it, or it's about this be able to populate over this the revision and be able to, let's say, gather everything just for the auto and have a kind of feature gate that you can enable if you like. That was the initial idea. We had this discussion, Stefan, about that you don't see having kind of this common annotation to customization, because that will create a drift between what you apply in the cluster and what is going to be stored in Git or whatever source. So then I was trying to think about some other way that doesn't involve any kind of workaround or something that is not an stable solution, or even creating a new controller, which I don't think it might be even feasible. So I mean that I'm kind of stuck.
Yeah. So the problem with annotating everything is that in order to get traces, you are basically lying to yourself. You are lying to the users, because users will care about, okay, my source changed, what other things have changed. But in order to propagate the change, you are now going to tell the users everything changed, right? Which it's like, why would you even consider that, right?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone wants that, because then every trace will have everything inside, which beats the purpose. Especially with if you looked at what we did with the external artifact and the artifact generator, we actually going the opposite way. It's like, this is what Flux users want. Flux users want, oh, I have this huge monorepo, hundreds of services. I only change one. I don't want to see events. I don't want to have anything reconciled but that service which originates from that directory. So people don't want the revision anywhere, basically. They only want to, trigger the reconciliation of a single thing that they've changed in Git. And it's quite understandable because reconciling everything, DDoS is the API, takes minutes, whatever. If you have stateful sets, it can take hours. No one wants it. So
Yeah.
saying, oh, in order to have traces, let's trigger all the reconciliations everywhere by annotating and creating fake drift in the whole cluster is not something that I would ever consider doing, feature gate or not.
Yeah.
Another thing that can be done is notification controller has the permissions to query the cluster, right? Notification controller already queries the cluster in some for some configuration. For example, you can create receivers and alerts which have a label selector.
Yeah.
Instead of saying the names of the resources, you have a label selector. And when you have a label selector, actually there is code in notification controller that goes on the cluster, creates a query, and gets the objects from the cluster. Now, what we can do is, based on the fact that we already are doing queries from notification controller, so we are not changing in any way the security stance and how notification controller works. We can have some optional field in the hotel provider or in the alert depending on
Mhm.
where we want it. And if that field is set, a Boolean, whatever, we can figure it out. I don't have an idea of a name or whatever, what it should be. Deep trace, or I don't know, something
Deep
like that.
tracing. Mhm.
Yeah. If that field is on, and then you receive an event from the root customization, because this is what you're trying to solve. You receive an
Mhm.
event from the root customization, but that root customization applies other customizations, and you would want to have the child customizations and their child
Yeah.
and everything inside the trace.
Yeah.
So in fact, we have a command in the CLI called Flux tree. Have you seen that?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Then you can list out
So
everything basically. Mhm.
yeah, so Flux tree, what it does, you point it to a customization and it looks in the inventory, finds, oh, this customization manages this other customization. It queries the cluster for that other customization. Then it looks in the inventory of that customization to discover other,
Mhm. Yeah. And
other
so on and so
customization or
forth.
other handler, right? So it
Mm.
goes deep down and discovers the whole reconciliation tree.
Mhm.
Now, we can have a similar code in notification controller. When you receive
Mhm.
an event from a customization,
Mhm.
you can say, okay, it's clear that this customization has reconciled. That means it has reconciled everything that it has in its inventory. So the inventory
Yeah.
at the end of the
Mm.
customization is updated. If you remove things, it gets removed from the inventory and so on.
Mhm. Yeah.
So a notification controller already has the RBAC in place to query Flux customizations and Flux hand releases because it has that capability already. So wouldn't we solve this issue of tracing by, instead of annotating everything and doing drift and so on, having a similar logic to the Flux tree command, where you receive the event, you know the Flux customization, then you query the cluster, you get the whole object, you look in the inventory, you find all the other customizations,
Mhm.
right? And then you can append events from those to the same trace ID.
Yeah. Trace ID. Mm. Okay, but how would that work in terms of if I'm having multiple events for different head releases and everything? How would that work concurrency wise? Like how I'm going to be
So
able
you
to
have
capture. Mhm. Yeah.
an alert which has helm release name star, customization name star, capture everything,
Okay. Okay.
right?
Yes.
Then you receive all these events from everything, but you don't really know the relationship between them. That's the
Exactly.
problem you are trying to solve right now,
Yeah. Exactly.
right?
Yes.
Because you have like 100 events, 50 customizations, 50 hand releases, but which one is a child of which one, you don't know, because that kind of information is not anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And you can answer the question by every time you receive an event, you do the Flux tree stuff. And you can do it
Okay.
like this and the other way around,
Okay.
right?
Going up.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good
going
enough.
up.
Well, that's a
Mm.
bit expensive, right? And we
Yeah.
run
No, it's not.
and we
It's
Performance
the control
wise.
runtime. No, it's the control runtime cache. We already do selectors by labels. There is no difference between querying an alert based on label setting alert or based.
so right, because we don't have watchers, but when you query an object with controller runtime, it already starts an informer, right?
Yes, and it caches it. And for sure,
It caches
notification
it.
control. Yeah. So
So
notification
notification controller
controller,
has cached customizations and home releases.
of course. What we tell every single controller in Flux is don't case secrets and config maps, because those are like
Yeah.
thousands of those, right? But the Flux
Well,
objects are already there. There is no, like, we tested this with labels when I implemented the label selector, right?
Mm.
Someone had 5K customizations in a namespace, created couple of alerts with different label selectors, and there was no problem finding the customizations that were matching the label to pair it with the alert and then a particular provider. So I don't think we'll run into performance issues as long as we query by label. And to go parent level, because we need to go child, but we also need to go parent. How you go parent is also with labels, because if a Flux customization applies another Flux customization, the child customization has two labels, the customization name and the customization namespace.
Yeah.
So you
yeah. So we
always
can
query
go up and
labels
down. Yeah. We can like
Mhm.
based
find the
on
whole
labels.
tree rooted on an object. We can also go up and find the root of which tree that object belongs to. But how do we convert the tree structure, the links, into what has to be sent as a trace, as a span to the hotel collector? How would that work? Like how? Okay, we have the tree. What do we send? Like what do we build?
So we need to figure out what's the root customization that will have the same source revision as the source that we are watching.
Mhm.
Then all the events that are coming, that are captured by my star alert,
Mhm.
we bubble up. Am I a parent of that customization? Or do I have child customizations that I manage? And we append to the same what we use, the alert unique ID hashed with the source revision, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So going up and down, once we hit one customization that matches
Mhm.
our trace ID, the one that we compose, we attach to that.
So the final goal is to compute the trace ID. Like
Yeah.
we are basically okay, we traverse the tree up and down, whatever, and then the goal is to find what trace ID to build. And
Yeah.
would that work? Like, would that solve the problem? I don't know enough about how the traces are rebuilt or like that sounds that makes sense. What do you think, Adrian?
I need to check the code on how it catches everything. Because I mean, if I have the proper data for the TCD, yeah, it will be able to list all down. But I need to see how to manage these. Am I a parent? Am I a child? How does check the inventory go down and up at the same
Maybe
time?
if you could like if you don't need, for example, to write all this code to test this if this will work, right? You don't need to traverse the tree. You like
Yeah.
if you like hard code something in to just to test it out, like
Yeah.
some tree
A
structure.
customization that applies another customization, you hard code, this is the tree.
Yeah, this relationship, yeah. And then
Yeah.
try to build the trace ID and see if that works
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
That
And
would be a
if
good starting point.
exactly, if we know that traversing the trees up and down solve our issue, what we can do is we can take the code from Flux tree, we move it to package, then we can use the tree traversal in notification control and in the CLI Notification controller
Mhm.
have to do it the reverse as well, but we do it in package, right?
Okay.
Yeah, we
to-
flux trace,
mm.
right? So it's flux trace and flux tree.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
it's a mix.
yes. So we can put this in package, so you don't have to rewrite all the code, all this racing. For now, let's hard code parent child and see if this idea would actually work. If it works, we can help out and move this from the CLI to the package, so you don't have to rewrite all this code and adapt a little bit the code to go the other way around, which is simple. I mean, simple. It's not simple, but it's doable. We can do it.
Yeah, it's normal. Yeah, it's a better way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I will check
Cool.
the code. And I will try to see also how it fits with the package, because I've checked that one long time ago. So need to double check that how it
Yeah, but
works.
you don't need to you don't need to concern yourself with package right now. Like
Oh
just
yeah.
hard code. Yeah, like just hard code the relationships and see if that solves the problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. I will.
Yeah,
Um,
if that solves the problem, we are going to help out with moving the code and everything.
yeah.
We
Okay.
can do it together.
Perfect.
Okay, so the meeting is over for 12 minutes now, but there's this subject that I would like to discuss, maybe not today, but it's about that issue where people are asking for more controls over impersonation in remote clusters. And I've been thinking a few things here, and I think it makes sense to solve this problem for remote clusters, not look like without remote cluster. I don't think we should it serves account name and that's it. It's like pod. But for remote clusters, it kind of makes sense because at the end of the day, you are bound to what you can impersonate by what credentials are being used for that kubeconfig, right? So if you regardless if you're using secret ref with a kubeconfig or if you're using config map ref, the new feature in 2.7, that the credentials there, either the IAM identity from the cloud in config map ref or the whatever you have in kubeconfig, those things have to have permission to impersonate whatever users want to impersonate. So if it's in the same namespace or not, it's really a constraint. I basically feel their pain in that issue. Like it's weird to have to mirror the namespaces across the clusters.
Yeah, I mean, I
And
made that intentional choice like a long time ago, knowing that it would be a limitation,
yeah,
inviting people to, like
so the
segment
idea I
their
just had is what if we add a field called impersonation under spec.kubeconfig. So under spec.kubeconfig, we can add impersonation. This field would have other fields to do impersonation. So for
yeah,
example, just
sure.
like what's a common thing to do, right? Like users, username and groups, right? Like all the fields, there's a bunch of fields that you can add in the impersonation config when you're creating a REST config. The
Yeah,
probably most common ones when you're like connecting with uh IDPs, right? Like you
yeah.
fetch a Google email and a bunch of Google groups, for example, you
I
do that,
can,
right? Like you put the email on the username field and you put the Google groups on the groups field. And so we could like just allow people to pass these fields in the impersonation config, and by doing that we're not breaking security because, as I said, at the end of the day what's in the kube config has to have permission for that impersonation. If it doesn't have permission to impersonate that username, or if it doesn't have permission to impersonate those groups, the API call will fail with some access error.
yeah.
So
Wait a second. But that assumption is very wrong because in practice does not happen. Everybody has the kubeconfigs as cluster admin.
Cluster admin.
everybody.
Yeah, typically.
So
Right.
like, because cluster API, this is how it generates it. And if you look at what the guy from Deutsche Telekom, which opened the issue, is saying, their kubeconfigs are all cluster admins, and he doesn't want to use workload entity or whatever because it's very convenient, right? So whatever
Right.
we
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
designing, we have to assume that no, kubeconfigs are not restricted, man. They are cluster admin, right? So don't start with the assumption that the kubeconfigs are restricted. That's why they want
But
impersonation to restrict, because they run as
right.
cluster admin. That's the whole goal, right?
Right. But
So they
think
can
about it.
impersonate anything.
This is why I defaulted it to.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
why we
But
put it on the namespace. That's the whole reason.
right. Right. But like, think about it. If in the kubeconfig you have cluster admin, but you as a, I mean, yeah, there's lockdown, right? Like the cluster admin can enforce lockdown, but if it's not, if it like if lockdown is not enforced, then I can remove spec.service account name and just use cluster admin from kubeconfig.secretref, right? So in this scenario, it would make sense to choose whatever username that doesn't even have to be a service account.
But
Yeah.
then anyone can put there any name. So you have two tenants.
Yeah.
You use this cluster admin kubeconfig. One team member finds out the name or looks in Git. You don't need to be too advanced into this. You look in Git, you see what the other team is using. Oh, it's using this user and this group. You copy paste them into your own config, and all of a sudden you can do whatever you want in
But
another
you can already choose
namespace.
whatever you want. But you can already choose like the
No.
scenario I just taught
What?
is
No.
listen. The scenario I
Matthias,
just described is
I like you,
lockdown is not enforced, right? So
What?
spec
How lockdown is not enforced?
you don't set the flag. You don't set default service account. That flag, right? In customized controller.
No.
It's not set.
Wait a second.
Imagine this flag is not
We are
set.
not talking about this. But we are not talking about this. It's useless. I'm not talking about doing impersonation if you don't enable multi-tenancy in Flux. There is no point to this. That's the whole idea. If you run Flux in a multi-tenancy way, you always have the default service account. I'm not talking about single tenant. If you do single tenant, then everybody should be cluster admin. You trust everybody. No point in doing any impersonation. So you are starting with this very with some assumption that don't match reality. Reality is you have to enable Flux multi-tenancy if you do multi-tenancy. We lock down
Yeah, it makes
everybody to a
sense.
namespace because kubeconfig, everybody has it with cluster admin, and it's the only way to protect the target cluster by locking down to a namespace, because that's what Kubernetes RBAC offers.
it's a proactive default, and we have to be sensitive to the fact that there are probably an uncountable number of people out there using Cluster API with large organizations and important code bases running Flux who basically use Flux's default behavior of service account impersonation, of namespace matching with target cluster as a security boundary. Like that security boundary is enforced by like limiting access to a particular folder and a particular customization in the parent cluster at the Git repo level. So if somebody can change their customization to point to some other principle in the target cluster, then it makes it really easy for somebody to break the security boundary.
Yeah, that's
Even
fair.
though the credential inside the cluster is cluster admin, the fact that that Flux only behaves this way means that you can use this to drop permissions by delegation of ownership of that customization. Because somebody's not allowed to make a customization in a different namespace. Like that's really easy to set up when managing the host cluster. So like
So
I like yes, I see like you could add this feature. It would definitely have to be opt-in only from a cluster administrator
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah, feature gate, of course. But like, so the thing is, if let's say I have hub and spoke and I have the hub managing lots of spokes, multi-tenant, then all these hub and spoke tree, not two level tree, uh, has to be the same namespaces across all clusters, like, or at least the hub has to have all the namespaces of has like the union of the namespaces of the spokes, right? So basically the
Ooh,
hub has
not
to have all the namespaces.
no,
Let's say.
because you can pick a namespace in the target cluster that becomes itself a hub and spoke of namespaces in the target
Of
cluster.
course, yeah.
So you can
What?
say this management namespace manages 5 dev teams applications in the target cluster.
Yeah, because you have a role binding in tons of namespaces that role bind to the service account in the management namespace in the target cluster. That's how RBAC works. So you from the hub cluster, you say management cluster A as a namespace. You have management cluster A in cluster A with the Flux service account there. Then for 20 namespaces, you create 20 namespaces with cluster with role binding to that Flux service account in the management namespace. And from there, you can distribute, you can apply the magic of impersonation in Flux is that, yes, it's tied to a service account in a namespace, but from that service account, you can give it rights to deploy stuff into other namespaces. RBAC
Yeah,
allows you to
the
do
first answer I gave in the issue, right? Like
yeah, of
you
course.
you
Like,
can bind like in role
and they
binding you can
don't want
reference
to
a
do
service
that.
account from other namespaces. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want to do that. They want, oh, I should be able to impersonate every service account in a namespace, but there's not multi-tenancy anymore because then the secret becomes the service account name. Anyone that knows that service account name can put it there and it will work also for them. I mean, you can't even call that multi-tenancy. I mean, that will never
Yeah.
land in Flux as a multi-tenancy feature. There's not a multi-tenancy feature.
Yeah.
That's YOLO
Yeah, what if you
impersonation.
Yeah,
I mean,
when I designed this default, we thought it through and kind of concluded that if you start with cluster admin somewhere in the target cluster being provisioned from the host, that you would be able, as the creator of that cluster, to provision the necessary RBAC in the target cluster such that the hub cluster would be able to then continue provisioning other things into it. And I think that it's like
same like
there
with
isn't anything that
EKS
isn't
Terraform,
possible.
like
You know, like you can always produce something in the hub cluster where the target cluster is willing to accept something from another namespace. And the namespace matching does dictate a little bit of structural choices, but in general, I I I feel like you should be able to build most of the things that you're looking for, right?
So
Like,
so if you create this copy is copy namespace, like because you have
Yes, of course.
the right. So the thing is you may want to have what you want is you have the kubeconfig secret in many namespaces in the hub. Because this way you can have customizations in this many namespaces with this kubeconfig secret, but then you use the spec.service account name for impersonation, and the namespace will be the namespace of the hub cluster, right? So users have ways to replicate the
The secret,
kubeconfig
yeah.
secret across namespaces in the hub,
And
right?
exactly, and that you do it in the hub where no tenant should have access to.
Right.
Because if you do hub and spoke, the tenant workloads and everything should land not in the hub, should land
Mhm,
in the target clusters, because that's why you are doing hub and spoke, right?
mhm.
So you can use, I don't know, Flux operator to copy secrets when they change, right? You create a resource set where that generates the cluster definition. Then you
Mm.
have another resource set that provisions the tenant namespaces in the hub, copies the secret, watches the secret if the controller if the controller that creates the cluster
Changes.
refreshes the secret, Flux operator will propagate that secret to all those tenant namespaces, which are just a mirror of the management namespace from the tenant cluster, not all the namespaces. I think that's
Yeah.
the wrong assumption that, oh, if I have hundreds of clusters and hundreds of namespaces in all those clusters, now I have 10K namespaces in the
Yeah.
hub cluster. No, you don't need to do that, right? You
Yeah,
just
I'm
need to
convinced.
understand how RBAC works and let
Yeah,
it.
like I mean, I gave 3 options in that issue, right? So, yeah, I mean, yeah,
we
it
have
makes
the
sense.
Flux to hub spoke example. Maybe here we can build an example of, instead of mirroring one-on-one namespaces, how we can layer this in a way that you have a management namespace and only that you mirror. Then you have role bindings so you can propagate. Is that idea tenant does not equal a namespace? A tenant can have many namespaces through role bindings. And I
So,
think
okay,
if
so you're
we,
saying, I got it. So, like you're saying, you have one namespace in the hub and one namespace in the spoke, and that namespace in the spoke will manage the tenants. Okay, I got it. But
not the tenants,
how?
but all the namespaces which belong to a tenant.
Right, exactly. So you're delegating a large part of what the work of the hub cluster would be to a management namespace in the spoke. How is that valuable versus not having hub and spoke at all? Like what's the real world justification for this model versus no hub and spoke? Because if I understand, hub and spoke is like do the tenant and namespace provisioning on the hub, right?
You don't want
No,
every
man.
cluster to run Flux. That's the
Exactly. That's the only thing. People don't want Flux, right? They don't want to have Flux on
they
clusters.
don't care if it has a
That's
small
the
footprint. It's
Yeah.
yeah. We only
That's
have
the only way, the only reason why would anyone run hub and spoke, because Flux is very lightweight, right? It's not going to name competition. But anyway, there is no reason why wouldn't you want to run Flux on every cluster. The only reason is your tenant, you don't want your tenants to be aware that Flux runs and everything is managed through Flux.
Right.
Right?
So
And this
or
is the
tenants
use
are
case of
using a different
telcos.
model like Crossplane to access their resources.
but in the management namespace in the spoke, what will that do if Flux is not in that cluster? Like what are you gonna have in the management namespace in the spoke if Flux is not running that spoke? Like what is it gonna manage? Like I understood that you would have Flux resources to provision the tenants and namespaces in the spokes. So if Flux is only in their hub, what do you have in the management namespace in the spoke? At like in this
And then you
example.
have to read the Flux to hub spoke example to understand how this works. We use target, basically you have all the Helm releases and everything in the hub, and you deploy the actual workloads in the spoke.
Yeah, this is vanilla hub and spoke. I understand. What I'm
So
saying is, in the example where you said, no, you have one namespace in the hub, one namespace, one management namespace in the spoke, and from
to
this
keep
management,
The
to
service
keep
account.
the service account there. That's the only reason, to use a single service account for one tenant, right? Has nothing to do with workloads. Has to do with what I
Okay, got it,
impersonate.
got it. I got it. Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
it's
so
kind
it's
of late.
just
Let's
it's
discuss this
just
another time.
so it's just
It's-
for the service account,
Of
right?
course,
Okay.
there is no Flux running there, so it's just a way to find the service account with the proper RBAC that gives you rights on the spoke cluster in more than one namespace.
Okay, so basically,
All of the RBAC resources have to go into the,
I guess
Work
we can
on
close
it.
the issue with one fix.
Yeah, don't close the issue, leave it on. We'll see. What that guy has to say. He should close the issue.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll see you next week
thanks everyone.
after 2.7.1 release. Bye.
Bye.